Greetings, Glitter Gang. Happy Thursday. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, February 25th. You're here for Kathryn Scraps Live. I'm Kathryn, and today we're going to be continuing the Pouch-A-Lope album. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing today. The other thing we're going to be doing today is it's book club day. And so we're going to be discussing Octavia Butler's Kindred today as well. And I'm also going to announce the March books, which you'll be voting on starting tomorrow, and also the April books, so that if you need to put any of those April books on hold, like if your library tends to have really long hold times, you can do that now in anticipation of those April books. So that's the start. Now, Gloria just said, look at those nails. Wow, thank you, Gloria. They're a lot longer than I thought they were going to be. This is the medium length from the company that I told you about last week, which is, I mean, I don't know. In my nail world, this is long, I would say. But I did do the glitter ombre for all of you. It's just a little hard to tell because the glitters are very subtle. So that's something I need to keep in mind when I do this, is that, you know, for the camera, it needs to be a little more like intense, you know. You're in Southern California. Nice. Enjoy your stay. Thank you. I'm glad they look nice. I never was able to get the other nails to come off, so I had to dissolve them in acetone. So, so here's what I think. I think we just have to settle in for like a month with each manicure. That's what I think, Gretchen. I think they're long. I'm glad you concur. So yeah, this is not what I was signing up for when I signed up for medium. And in fact, earlier today, to start the show, I couldn't even press the switch on the power strip that does the power for the lights and the camera and whatever, because like the nail was hitting like, you know, the power strip before my finger couldn't touch the, I don't know how to describe this. Here, I'll show you. So like, say that this little thing was the power strip, like my nail was preventing my finger from being able to touch the switch. So I had to like get a tool and like jam it on the power switch. I was like, okay, I don't know. We may not be able to function here. So we'll see how I do. We'll see how I do. But, you know, by the time we've had them on for 4 weeks and they start hopefully dropping off, or if they don't ever drop off, I'll just have to dissolve them again. But I want to give my nails some recovery time in between. So we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what all the books are going to be in just a second. But before I do that, I am just going to give a content warning. So the book that we're going to be discussing today, which is Kindred by Octavia Butler, this is it here. This is the Folio Society edition, is about slavery in the United States in the early 1800s. And so there's content warnings for everything that entails, which is violence, rape, oppression, racism, sexism, all of that. I'm going to try to discuss it, you know, not so like graphically, unless we need to, because this is a crafting show. But what I am going to do is, whenever we're talking about the book explicitly, I have this image right here in the upper right corner of the screen that I can pop up to let you know that that's what we're talking about. So this announcement is for some like hypothetical person like 3 years in the future who just stumbles across this playlist and wants to make this album, you know, so that they, if they're not in the right headspace to have this discussion, or if they don't want to be spoiled for the book, just when that's up, that's when I'm going to be talking about it, and you can just mute. You can just mute. And when I'm actually, like when I'm giving crafting instructions, I will take that down so that you know to unmute and listen. So there we go. And if you want me to do this for all the books, so that, you know, there's no spoilers for books on the channel, you know, I can do that for all the books if you think that would be useful or helpful. So I will put that up when we're in depth discussing the book itself. All right, before we get into that, starting tomorrow, which is Friday, February 26th, you're going to be voting on the March book. Now, if you recall, the theme for March is books that Reese Witherspoon picked for her book club in March. So they're her March 2020 book, her March 2019 book, and her March 2018 book. So that's the theme, linking them all together. So if they're bad, then it's Reese Witherspoon's fault, and I have no responsibility whatsoever. I take no responsibility. Okay, so the 3 books are for March, are Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. That's book number 1. This is told in a journalistic style, so it's like a journalist interviewing members of a fictional 1970s band called Daisy Jones and the Six. So that's what the theme of the book is. And then we have Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jaswal, which is a collection of short stories, I believe, a short story collection. So there's that. I don't know if they're all erotic. Like, I honestly didn't research these books at all, so I really don't know what any of them are about, other than I'm more familiar with Daisy Jones and the Six just because I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by the same author, and looked up what else she had written. And then the 3rd book is The Jet Setters by Amanda Eyre Ward, which I think is a vacation-y beach read of some kind. I'm basing that completely on the cover, so if it ends up being like some tragedy, then blame the marketing department for this book. Judy's already working her way through the March books and is ready for the April books. All right, so the theme for April is lighthearted or funny books about people who sell books or something. So I was looking at lists of Jet Setters is much deeper than that. It figures. It figures. I was looking for lighthearted books. So I didn't search for comedies because we really crashed and burned on our comedy month last year. That was a terrible experience for all of us. So I was like, we're not going to look for comedies. We're not doing that. So let's look for lighthearted instead of comedies. So I noticed that 3 of the most popular and highest rated books that showed up on multiple of these lighthearted books lists were all somehow about books or book selling. And so that's how the theme happened. So we have The Bookshop on the Corner by Jenny Colgan, and I believe this is a series. It's about a woman who, I think she's in Scotland, and she converts a van into a bookshop and she drives it around. And so I think like each book she's in a different place maybe. So it's part travelogue, part book selling. It sounds really cool, so I'm happy about that. These ones I did pick, so there's no one to blame but me if they turn out to be not good, but I think they'll probably be good. The second one is The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. And again, these are the April books. And then the last one, and this book is very highly regarded, is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. And like I said, this book is a very highly regarded book. I had heard of this book before. In fact, I'd also heard of The Bookish Life of Nina Hill before. So I think that we'll be okay in April, whichever one we pick. Gretchen says she's already read The Bookshop on the Corner and that it's fabulous. So I think we'll all have a really good time in April. All right, so those are the April books. So Today is Kindred by Octavia Butler. Tomorrow in the Kathryn Scraps group, in the Glitter Gang group, you will be starting the voting on the March books. I just told you the April books, so you can put them on hold at your library if you need to. Those are those announcements. And then the final announcement that is not book related is that on Monday, and I believe Monday's March 1st, let me just make sure. Yes, on Monday, March 1st, I'm going to be posting the post for Glitter Party 2021. So Glitter Party 2021 will start on Monday. Okay, so on Monday, 2 posts will go up, the post with the March book and the post for the Glitter Party. So look for 2 posts from me on Monday. And then you'll have 3 full months. So you'll have all of March, all of April, and all of May. And then I'll announce the winner in June. Okay? Oh, I have another announcement. The tape has shipped from the manufacturer. It's supposed to be here by the end of the week, so that Mr. Lifeguard and I should, you know, fingers crossed, nothing goes wrong with the shipping. Mr. Lifeguard and I will be able to pack all the orders that are left from the Scrappy Bowl sale over the weekend, and they'll go out beginning of next week. So that's that. And then after we've sent all the orders out, then we'll do the prizes. So hopefully, you know, by the time March is over, everything will be sorted out. Everything will be sorted out. Okay. All right. So let me try to remember where I was in this project. Let me move this just so it doesn't get dirty. And all right, yeah, we had done all of the, and Monica did do the Canadian prizes. That's true. The Canadians are all set. It's just the U.S. people who we're lagging behind, but that's okay. I'll get everyone. Okay, so we still need to make inserts for the pouches. We had completely finished, I believe, 1 envelope, which is, you know, decorated inserts, looking cute, you know, whatever. So, yes, okay, completely finished 1 envelope. And then I think we need to work on this next envelope here, which is partially started. And actually, let's keep all the envelopes together. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like I cut a piece of paper for it. Oh yeah, I cut the backgrounds for all of the envelopes. So what I need to do now is I need to pick paper for up here and down here, and then pick some embellishments for what is going to be, you know, whatever decor element, which I think what I might want to do is make some sort of pocket out of unembellishment so that we can tuck the photo mats behind it. That might be fun. So let's think about papers and embellishments for this. So let me grab the embellishment sheets, see what we've got for embellishments that might work. And I wonder if this is going to be something I would like because it's kind of botanical and we already have some kind of botanical thing happening. I don't know if I think the colors are right because this one's got a lot of pink, blue, and yellow, and this one's very green, brown. So maybe not that specific one, but maybe something similar. And then once I've got everything picked out, we can start chatting. So let's see. I think this is too big for what I want. And that might make a better insert into a pouch anyway. I kind of like this You Are Beautiful, and I also kind of like this Friends of a Feather. The Friends of a Feather might be good as part of a cluster of some kind. So let me cut out the Friends of a Feather. Yeah, because I think the Friends of a Feather as like the base of something else, or like a horizontal with a vertical, that could really work, but it would not with this one. So we need to find something that fits its vibe. So that's okay. That's okay. And then I'm just going to look at this page and see if I think the answer's on this page, and I don't. Do I think the answer's on this page? I don't. Let's go to another page. All right, so on this page we have a couple pockets, and this pocket is in the exact right color scheme, so it's a possibility. I could definitely do this as a stitched pocket and layer the Friends of a Feather on top of it. Or even this one that's just gray, although that pattern might be a little much with this geometric pattern. So let's pull out this pocket. And we've got our Friends of a Feather, and then I think I'm going to grab this blue feather as well and layer the blue feather with the gray feather. And maybe, do I want to tuck something in like coffee beans? Maybe these cute little pink coffee beans, tuck them somewhere. That could be fun. I'll cut them out. All right, so there we go. And do I want one of, I'm gonna take the Best Friends from this page and cut it out in case I want to put one of these on every page, because so far we have enough to do that. And then this geotag as well for something gray. All right, I think that's a good start. We might not use all of those pieces, but we can definitely use, you know, a bunch of those pieces. And these little tiny pieces, again, I'll just put them, ooh, maybe I'll just look really quickly at my little tiny word stickers too, because if I could get something yellow, that would be nice. Is this Cup of Joe the only yellow I have? Because I don't think I want that Cup of Joe. That's kind of a bummer. All right, I'll do it. Why not? I'm gonna pull, well, there's yellow on the envelope. I was gonna say I want to pull yellow down from that corner, but there's yellow on the envelope, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Just put these into the envelope. I don't think I need this arrow if I have that geotag, so I think we're in good shape. All right, so let me set this aside. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with the envelope, and I'm gonna build the envelope, and then I'll put adhesive on the back of all these other little bits and start cutting them out and prepping them, and then we'll think about how we're gonna assemble it all. So while I do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the author of the book we're going to be discussing today. Just a little bit to give you an idea of who she was, since I want to do that. So while I cut this out, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Octavia Butler. So she is from California. She was born in Pasadena in 1947, and she decided she wanted to be a writer when she saw the movie Devil Girl from Mars, and she decided that she could do better than that. And she was 12 at the time. So that was the inciting incident. She saw this terrible movie and she thought, okay, I can do better than that. Which she did. And so what she used to do was she used to work for a labor agency, very similar to the one that Dana works for in Kindred. And she would get up at 2 a.m. every morning so she could write for several hours before she had to be on the job. And she had jobs like potato chip inspector, she washed dishes, and in the graphic novel of Kindred, because there is a graphic novel adaptation, she actually Dana has those jobs. She has those jobs. So I got the graphic novel for today. I've read it before. I read it again yesterday. But I noticed when I was reading it again yesterday that here's Dana inspecting potato chips, and there she is dishwashing. So she has all the in the graphic novel, she has all the jobs that Dana had in the book, plus jobs that Octavia Butler had in real life. So I thought that was really interesting that they included that. And I do think that Dana is very much, informed by Octavia Butler's actual life experiences in a lot of ways. So, that kind of comes through in that Dana's from California. She's roughly the same age. Well, no, she's about 10 years younger than Octavia Butler when she was writing the book, I would say. So, other things are Octavia Butler was the first Black woman to publish a science fiction novel. And Kindred is her fourth novel. She got her first typewriter from Harlan Ellison when he read some of her work from a writer's workshop and thought that, which she wrote everything in longhand, which again is something that Dana does. And so he bought her a typewriter to make it a little easier for her. Now, Harlan Ellison, if you don't know who that is, he's actually kind of famously a horrible jerk. But his work, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, was adapted for film by James Cameron as the Terminator. So I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is about an AI that goes rogue and kills everyone on the planet. So, and yeah, he's credited as one of the writers for the Terminator movie. So, and she has won the Hugo twice. She won the Hugo twice. She won the Nebula Award twice. Those are two of the most prestigious science fiction awards that there are. And when she was 48, she was awarded the Macarthur Genius Grant, which is the Macarthur Foundation. You can't apply for this grant. They just give it to people who they think show extraordinary promise in their field. and it's like, I think it's $1 million, and it's just so that they can have time to work on whatever it is that they're doing. Just have more time. They don't have to worry about like housing, food, whatever. And she was the first science fiction writer, period, ever to win that award. So of any gender or race. So just the first person who wrote science fiction who was ever given that award. And so she won a lot of awards, but I don't think she's as well known necessarily, or maybe it's not like popularly known, because she did not make the New York Times bestseller list until 2020, last year, with when the Parable of the Sower hit the New York Times bestseller list. And because the Parable of the Sower is about a pandemic, I think that's why there was renewed interest in it. But she's a major influence on a lot of science fiction writers who are writing today. Many of them have credited her as inspiration, including Tanana Reeve-Dew and Dr. Nnedi Okorafor and N.K. Jemisin. N.K. Jemisin is the first person to ever win 3 consecutive Hugo Awards for Best Novel, which she won for her Broken Earth trilogy. So she really paved the way for a lot of people. And her books are really important. This is the book that if people have heard of her and they aren't science fiction fans, this is usually the one they've heard of, Kindred. So it's probably her most accessible book if you aren't into genre fiction. So it's a good one to start with, but a lot of her stuff is a lot weirder than this. So yeah. What I think is really interesting about Octavia Butler is she writes about the past and she writes about the future, but her books' themes are always very relevant to the present. So, you know, I've read books of hers set in the way distant past, like thousands of years ago, the recent-ish past, like Kindred, and then far, far, far in the future, like the Xenogenesis trilogy. Which that is being adapted for television by Ava DuVernay, so for I think Amazon Prime. So when that comes out, it will be the first adaptation of her stuff, which is kind of crazy, for film or television. I think I'm going to do the edges as well. All right. Okay. There we go. So now I just need to glue this together. So anyway, I think she accomplished a lot. She's one of my favorite writers. I know I've mentioned her a bunch of times. But I always find what she's saying about society to be very, very interesting. So, there's your facts about the author. Don't expect me to do research for other authors. So hopefully, that's enough. That's enough for the year. That's the extent that I'm willing to do. All right, so that's going to go there, and then that's going to go like there. And then we'll put this, maybe this one, go the other direction like so. And then maybe tuck the Best Fiends. Put a little, maybe some little beans. We probably won't use the coffee beans, but all right, that's a good start. Okay, so I'm gonna start talking about the books while I tape and cut these out. So I'm gonna put up the little spoiler warning or content warning or whatever. So I'm gonna be talking about the book now. All right. So I'm just going to cover these with tape and cut them out and ink them, and then I might back them on cardstock. We'll see. We'll see. Because I think they might look better with a little bit more black behind them. Or not black, because I use gray, but with a little, like a shadow. All right. Okay, so this book is Kindred. It was written in the 1970s. It was published, I believe, in 1979. And it is about a 26-year-old black woman named Dana from California from 1976, and I think that date's important, who travels back in time through a mechanism that we never really know or understand to 1815, and then for like the next 20 years beyond 1815, Maryland, specifically to the Wayland plantation, which is owned by an ancestor of hers, Rufus Wayland. Well, originally it's owned by his father, ultimately becomes owned by Rufus. He is her great-great-great-great-grandfather of some kind, and which she knows from a family Bible. And he is, I think he's depressed, I guess, but he's at first he's reckless, and then he basically, he doesn't care about living or something. Like, there's obviously something going on with Rufus where, you know, he doesn't take care of himself. He doesn't care if he lives or dies, and so he's often in life-threatening situations. So as a kid, it seems like he's maybe just accident prone, and then as he grows older, you know, they become more and more these situations of his own devising or fault or contribution. So, and so Dana has to wrestle with the fact that if she doesn't, yeah, they never do really explain the why he is the way he is. There's obviously something wrong with him, you know, and I think it's possible that what's wrong with him is that he's grown up in the society he's grown up in, and it has done something to his empathy and his brain, because he gets worse and worse and worse and worse as he goes on. And I think one of the major themes of the book is the corrupting influence of power, because he's empathetic, and like when he's a kid, he's okay. Like he says terrible stuff occasionally, but like it's because it's stuff he's been taught by his parents, and Dana's able to talk to him and explain why that's hurtful, and he understands it, you know. But he loses that as he grows. And I think that the corrupting influence of power is a major theme of the book, not just in regards to Rufus, but in regards to everyone who lives in the society. Because living back then changes Kevin, her husband, changes her, you know, as well. Like, I think one of the things that happens a lot in the book is Dana is like, okay, well, you know, she's like draws a line where if Rufus crosses this line, that's it. I'm not going to help him anymore. And then Rufus will inevitably cross that line. And then she'll say, well, at least he didn't whatever. And then that whatever becomes the next line. And then, like, that keeps going on. And the way that they think she and Kevin talk and think about the situation that they're kind of like steeped in, you know, what they're willing to put up with, what they're willing to accept changes. There's a good quote in the book about it. When the kids are playing at the auction, and Dana says, where is it? Okay, I'm gonna have to just search for the word ease, because she talks about ease. The ease at which you become corrupted by these malevolent hierarchies. She and Kevin are talking about it, because like Kevin's telling her it's not a big deal, that the kids are just playing this game, and that all things considered, this plantation isn't that bad, because he's been living there at that point, I think, for like 5 years or something. Now my Kindle won't go to the page. Kindle, why are you doing this? I'm gonna have to restart my Kindle. This figures. All right, now I'm gonna have to Google it. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We don't have to have a good discussion. I don't know. That was a pipe dream. That was a pipe dream. Well, I can't find it. That or whatever. We'll figure it out once my Kindle restarts and pulls itself together. But she basically says, like, one of the things that concerns her about them being stuck in the past for any length of time is the ease with which you kind of they are getting corrupted by the society. So, and I think that that's important because when they're talking about the corrupting influence of malevolent hierarchies, or when Octavia Butler, the author, is talking about that, she's including Rufus, of course, because he becomes so terrible, but she's also including Dana and her husband, because it changes how they think as well. I think one of the ways that we can see that in the book is that is the use of the word alien in the book, and then the use of the word kindred in the book. Because even though the book is called Kindred, that word only appears in the book once. And it's when Dana's talking about how she and Kevin are kindred spirits because they're both writers. They both care about the same things. And then she uses the word alien a lot whenever she starts to think of how she is supposed to be this alien in their world back in the 1800s. And yet she's starting to think of it as home, more home than California, because of how much it's changing her the more time she spends there. And so she uses the word alien 3 times, and all 3 times it's when she's returning to the Wayland plantation and thinks she relaxes because she's home. And she then is like, no, this is not home. I'm not, this place is alien. I'm alien to this place. So I think that's kind of really interesting because she's actually kin with 2 characters in the book, but she doesn't think of them that way or refer to them that way. So anyway, we're getting like way ahead. So that was that's the summary of the book. She has to keep Rufus alive in order to exist. So essentially, in order to preserve her own existence, she has to cooperate with whatever is going on around her, because she doesn't want to change too much, because she doesn't want to prevent her ancestor from being born. So she can't, start a rebellion or just kill Rufus when he's being a jerk and being oppressive and doing violent things, because she has she understands that if this particular person isn't born, this person isn't born until, I think she's been 20 years in the past or something like that, then she may not exist, just may not exist ever. She doesn't exactly know how the time travel works. So she has to cooperate with what's going on. And that's her struggle. And I think one of the messages of the book is that, we can, as modern society, look back on these historical oppressions and think that, oh, we would never participate in a malevolent hierarchy like that. We would never participate in oppression like that. Like, except we do now participate in malevolent hierarchies and in oppression. You know, people just do. You just do, either for your own comfort or your own society, you know, convenience, self-preservation, like whatever. You know, there are reasons and ways. Yeah, so Gretchen says, what bothered me is that he clearly didn't die. So, you know, obviously he lived long enough to sire her ancestor. So, you know, does she actually have to save him? Or, you know, or is it because of the paradox of time travel? She's always gone back. And so she's always saved him, and she's in a loop. She's in a permanent loop where she's just doing this over and over and over again. And Gretchen says, and this is why I don't like time travel. When you start thinking about it, you start to go crazy. So there's two general ways to think about time travel. Just as a little digression, because it does kind of matter for this book. And that is that you can think of time as a river that flows in one direction. And you can think of time as a lake in which all times and all possibilities exist at the same time, all the time, and we just perceive it as flowing in one direction. Okay? And so depending on which theory of time the author of any particular time travel uses, that changes how the narrative works. So I think that Butler is seeing time as the river, right? So because she has always gone back, you know, she's just always there because the perception of what's happening is from it as it's happening. So the river is flowing in this direction, and she's always in 1815, and she's always in 1976, you know, so she just goes back. And then it flows to the point where she goes back, and then it flows and she goes back. So she's always gone back, basically. She's always gone back. Or if you think of it as a lake, she's always going back and she's always not going back. You know, she's always in California and she's always in Maryland. So those are the two different ways to think about it. Well, I think it's more like you need to think about, you know, I think one of the things that Octavia Butler is trying to impress on the reader is that if you live in a malevolent hierarchy of any kind, then it will change you. And how it changes you, and how you participate in it just kind of depends on whether or not you have the power to do something about the situation or you don't. And so an example of this in modern times now would be that when I buy any sort of smart device with a screen and a battery like this, or like this, I participate in the oppression of people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo because The minerals that are used to make these devices are mined there in conditions of paraslavery, in which the people are paid so little that it's not a living wage, and their children have to work in these mines with them, and the conditions are so hazardous that people lose limbs, get cancer, and it's all because the companies that manufacture these devices say they're only going to pay X amount, and because no one knows people don't know about what the conditions are like necessarily, they, don't insist on better working conditions because it's out of sight, out of mind. It's not happening where I live. I'm not aware of it. And so this is a form of participation that I engage in, in oppression. It just is. And so, while I can say that, slavery was absolutely wrong and needed to absolutely end, and that the people who participated in it were doing the wrong thing, and I'm of course right when I say that, I also have to say that I participate in oppression and I don't do anything about it. So basically, I just don't need to be on a high horse, as high of a horse, because, and that, I did look into if I could ethically consume a cell phone. If there was a phone, on Earth that was ethically made, like where you knew 100% that everyone involved, from the mining of the materials to the assembly to the whatever, had a living wage, worked in safe conditions, whatever, and you just can't. Your choices are don't have a cell phone or participate in the system. So, and obviously the most moral thing I could do would be to not have a cell phone, but I choose not to. So there you go. Is that a bummer? I mean, the book is kind of a bummer because what Octavia Butler is doing, I think, is she's using the past to talk about the present. And, she was writing to civil rights activists about, everyone needing to make sure that they kind of like were checking themselves, making sure that they were always, looking out for where they could be doing harm. So anyway, so I think that's one of the huge messages of the book, is that oppression, it's gonna change everyone, and the degree to which it changes them may have something to do with like where they are. Obviously, Rufus has changed a lot because he's the architect of the oppression. And then also Alice is changed a lot. Other people are changed a lot as the direct victims of the oppression. But even people standing sort of on the sidelines who aren't participating directly, also like Kevin and Dana, are changed as well. I don't think we're supposed to have good vibes for Kevin, but I don't think we're supposed to have bad vibes for Kevin. I think, Kevin is, how you hear the phrase, the patriarchy hurts men, when talking, in discussions of feminism. I think that Kevin is an example of someone who's harmed by the malevolent hierarchy that he participates in, just exists in, I guess I should say, because he is an abolitionist when he is stuck back in the past for 5 years when they get separated. And he does participate in the Underground Railroad, and he does assist in a slave rebellion. So, he is doing what he can. But it also changes him. Like, he says things like, this plantation isn't all that bad, which is just, it's bad. Like, it's bad, Kevin. It's like, what are you saying? Like, what are you talking about? So, you know, it does change him. It does change him. He finds it hard to go back to California after 5 years living in the past. You know, he struggles with modern times. Yeah, you know, it changes him. And I don't think it changes him for the better. And I think, like, Dana gets vibes from him that if he spends too much time in the past, it's going to do something to him that's going to make her have to worry about him. And that's why she doesn't want him there in the past. So, yeah, I mean, Kevin needs to check his privilege, basically, to use the modern uh, phrase. Like, Kevin, you know, he's a man from he's a white man from the 70s. Okay, so he's not a white man from the 2020s even. Okay, because this 50 years ago. So things in the past could never be as bad. Well, and that's another interesting thing where she's more worried about him when they go in the past than she's worried about herself. And one of the questions I have is that reasonable, or is that like her thinking that it's her responsibility for whatever reason to look after him, because he is the one who has the more privileged conditions, who is actually probably less likely to be in danger in the past, but she's worried that he won't like stop mouthing off about how slavery is wrong. Like, her concern is that he doesn't know how to read the room, I guess, and know when it is and is not okay to talk about certain topics. She thinks that's not a learned behavior that he has, and that's part of his privilege as well. Yeah, so Kimberly says, I've thought the same thing, meaning about the cell phones and participation in malevolent hierarchy. Some will say you have to take a stand somewhere, but enough people to make a change is not going to stop people from buying phones. In other words, it is going to take huge action. So either 100 million people in America have to say, we're not buying phones, we're boycotting phones until conditions in the Congo change. Or the other thing you can do is, right now, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is suing the country of Belgium. So the two countries are in a legal battle with each other. And there's not just suing Belgium, and I'll talk about in a second why they're suing Belgium specifically, but they're also suing Microsoft, Apple, Google, like Samsung, Huawei, everyone who makes phones or participates in phones. Okay, so the Congo they are fighting back right now. So one thing you could do is you could support that effort, because if anything's going to succeed, it's something like that. But all of these mining companies with these terrible conditions are all Belgian companies, I guess. So, so that's why they're suing, Belgium, I guess, the country itself, because all of these companies are, headquartered there, from there, whatever, that mine cobalt specifically, but other stuff. Okay. And also, also those two countries have beef going back centuries. In the sense that there were some real abuses done there over rubber, by the Belgians. So this is kind of a long time coming reckoning. In other words, they haven't stopped their abuses. But yeah, supporting that effort is a way to, I don't think it's a diversion from the book discussion, Kimberly, to talk about this phone thing. I'm just using the phones specifically because there's not a way to buy them ethically. There are a lot of other things that there is an ethical version available, like, say, fashion. Like, fast fashion creates human rights crises in Bangladesh and Vietnam and Cambodia and, you know, create suffering all over the world, for example. But you can buy ethical fashion. There is a way to buy fashion that where everyone along the chain, from the people who produced the materials to the people who put them together to the people who sold them, everyone is okay and not being abused. But with phones, there's not an alternative. You just have to accept it. You just have to accept it and participate in it, or be severely limited in their ability to, you know, work, communicate, whatever. So, but, you know, I mean, that's kind of the point, is there were people who, you know, that was what they were dealing with. It was like, well, what can I personally do to stop this institution, you know? Even if I think it's wrong, what am I going to do about it? Me, you know? And ultimately what they did is they fought a war. They fought a war. So, you know, 700,000 people died. So ultimately it got to the point where it became big enough that something happened, you know, that something radical happened. So, but it would have been good if it hadn't taken that. Like, if the people had all just, like, told their representatives that this just can't go on. You know, this just can't not go on. And we're not going to reelect anyone who doesn't vote the way we want to vote. But anyway, so, but yeah, back to the book. So Joyce is saying that Kevin thinks he understands things from Dana's point of view, but he could never, because he is indeed a white man. Absolutely. I think that's Kevin's problem, right? So Kevin thinks he gets it because, you know, he's doing pretty well in terms of, you know, egalitarianism for a white guy from the 70s, you know, and he cares about civil rights, and, but, like, he can't get it because even when they're back there, he's not in the same danger as she is. You know, he just doesn't have the same things to be concerned about as she does. So that is, like, it's not the same for him, you know. And even when he is in danger, he, you know, where he could be in danger of execution, you know, you know, he could be in danger of being killed for his participation in the Underground Railroad and the rebellions. You know, his life could end, but, you know, would he be tortured to death? No. You know, he doesn't have to worry. It's different for him because he would be hanged. Okay? Like, but the people that he was helping, they could be sold down to, like, a sugarcane plantation, which those had the worst working conditions and worst torture of any kind of plantation at all. And, like, that's another thing that they talk about in the book. You know, when someone's going to be punished, it's by being sent away from the Maryland plantation and being threatened to be sent to, like, a sugarcane plantation in Louisiana or a cotton plantation in Georgia, because, you know, things can always get worse. And that's one of the things that even Dana doesn't realize until it's pointed out to her, because she has that thing where she's like, well, I'm just going to kill him. I can't take it. I don't care. You know, I don't care if that means I'm never going to exist. I'm going to kill him, and that's it. And then I think it's Carrie who, you know, tries to make her understand that they'll break up the families, they'll, you know, sell them into harsh conditions if she does that she's going to make it so much worse for them, and that she needs to, like, check herself because she still has that privileged position, because she's not in the same condition that the same situation as they are. She doesn't have kids to worry about, she doesn't have a family to worry about, and she can leave sometimes, you know. It's not always easy, but she can leave, and they can't. So it's kind of just all the different layers. I think it's a really well crafted story. And there's a lot to think about that, like, is totally relevant to now, you know. So February was a really mind-stretching month. Yeah, the books for February were all very challenging reads. If you read all three of them in February, that's a lot. I read Riot Baby and Kindred in this month, and my plan had been to reread The Underground Railroad as well as rereading Kindred, and reading Riot Baby for the first time. And after, I couldn't. It was not. Didn't have it in me to reread The Underground Railroad, which I do think is an excellent book as well. Very different from this book in a lot of ways, because it's a lot more fantastical of an atmosphere, because even though this involves time travel, it's very much like it's just very much rooted in reality most of the time. Like, the only really fantastical thing going on in Kindred is the time travel. Other than that, it's all, real world stuff, real world problems. Okay, so earlier in the time travel discussion, in the chat, which I didn't read like out loud, there was questioning of like, maybe Dana was always destined to live this life. And I think it's interesting to think about it as a thing having to do with birthdays. So there's a number of birthdays in the book, okay? There is, Candy says the main message I got was that too many people are inherently evil. Well, that goes back to, I think, the corrupting influence of power and malevolent hierarchies. That even if you weren't evil when you came out of the womb, you're constantly, these forces are constantly working on you. These societal forces are constantly working on you, and will corrupt you unless you really take action against it. Like, you have to be constantly working to try and, not be corrupted. Like, it requires your energy, I think. All right, so now that we've got all the pieces cut out, we can kind of see about sticking them together. So I think this is pretty cute, actually, this little cluster. Do we need the beans? I don't think we need the beans. What do you all think? Or maybe we don't need the geotag. But I like the little, I like it like this. What do you all think? Let me take off this, the book thing, and we'll talk about the page for a second.